Hey, this is Michelle with Brilliant Quest, and I want to talk to you about the biggest threat to your mind that you never see. I want to talk to you about new. Yes, new. Our addiction to new is out here wrecking lives, getting people put out their houses for cheating, shiny objects, overspending. Oh my gosh, it is so much. And so let me tell you about the study that they did back in 2021. So, the wonderful thing about neuroscience is just like your brain is ever changing whenever you have new experiences, your brain is malleable. Neuroscience is the same way. They are ever changing. And so you got to stay on it. And I love keeping up with what's happening in neuroscience and the biology of the mind, the neurobiology of it. And so in 2021, they did a study where they took lab mice and they started trying to see if there was a way for mice to be able to regulate something that they thought prior to that was part of the unregulated part, the central nervous system, stuff that you can't override. Like for instance, if you try to hold your breath and your body is strong enough, it'll knock you out and make you faint so that it can keep breathing before it lets you kill it. And so they thought that a lot of the hormonal releases of the brain were out of our purview where we wouldn't be able to control them. So that's what this experiment was. And y'all, guess what? The mice showed out. The mice started finding ways to regulate their own dopamine at will. And so from that 2021 study, they started looking at, now, of course, they usually like to look at it in the low-hanging fruit way, and that's usually through through physical performance. And so they started looking at HIIT, high intensity interval training. That's what it is, HIIT. They started looking at the impact of it on HIIT and some other training modalities for athletes, because that's where they love to start when it talks about the brain. Isn't it something that athletes get the most elite mental training around, but they use their bodies? That's the insight for us that neurobiology and the study of the mind and knowing how to use the mind is going to be something that's going to help all of the body. Okay. So when they started looking at how to get athletes to do this and looking at the effectiveness of HIIT training, they were like, wait a minute, people could possibly start regulating their dopamine. Now, dopamine is important out of the neurotransmitters because dopamine is the reward hormone. The word dope, meaning the drug that people use to get high, dopamine. And what we started to encounter was when we had these little handheld computers that were stronger than the computer that launched the rockets to the moon. Don't come at me, theorist. Let's just pretend that you believe it too, or that you accept it. Okay. But anyway, focus, Michelle. When we started having these supercomputers in our hands that are portable, we started being able to get these dopamine hits over and over and over. And there became a problem called dopamine overdosing, where people were to the point where they were so addicted to their phones that to remove the phone from them caused neurological issues. I mean, think about it. I mean, even me. They have well-established studies that show the average person is always within 3 feet of their phone. Yeah. And so when you have that kind of device that can give you that external input of dopamine, yeah, it would help for us to be able to take that power back. And so this is why I'm bringing it to you, because can y'all tell I'm excited about this? I am. And I was kind of like tapping into it myself and didn't realize it. So one of the things that you can do, because of course, some of it's complicated, but there is an easy way to start training yourself to release dopamine at will. And that is through short and quick wins. So when you are wanting to be able to get that feel good, that feel good feeling from dopamine, and to get it to release, do things that give you a quick win. And things like, now I'm all about atomic habits and doing little short things to build good habits. And some of the habits I have are because I sit so much writing and, creating and that kind of thing, I have got to the point where I try to do what is called invisible exercise. So with invisible exercise, so say for instance, I'm making tea and I've put the kettle on. I know that for me, it takes, once I fill the kettle with cold water, it takes 6 minutes for my kettle to heat my water up for my tea. And in those 6 minutes, and it's in my kitchen, of course, y'all should see me. I'm high kicking, I'm squatting. I have this high arm, high knee where I alternate and do. You do that for 2 minutes, you're going to feel it. And, all those different things. And now don't judge me. I do sometimes use the microwave. I don't use it as much, but I do sometimes still use the microwave. And so if, for instance, I'm heating up something and it takes about 3 minutes, I'm doing high knees, high arms for 3 minutes. And I know that doing high knees, high arms for 3 minutes, I'm going to get usually about 150 reps of them. And I'm talking about for each side, because, I don't do that cheating. It's like 1 rep is both sides. And then sometimes, and this is the go-to for me, is I use my kettlebell. And I have I have the regulation one. So it's the pink one. I have the blue one too. But if you go on and you look at the regulation one where all the bells are the same size, I have the first two, the pink and the blue. And so I know in 3 minutes, I can get a good 100 kettlebell swings in the 3 minutes. Now, y'all, I've been doing this for about 3 years. And over those 3 years of just doing hidden exercises, because during my menopausal odyssey, I had blown up. Over those 3 years, I'm down 37 pounds. That's how powerful that is. But the bigger thing, it is what helped me to go through menopause without any hormonal replacements, because I didn't know at the time that I was starting to regulate my dopamine. Because once I get through with that little 3 minutes of high knees, 3 minutes of kettlebells, or 3 minutes of squats, you get a dopamine release, because dopamine is a good thing when it's not misused. Dopamine is all about rewarding you so that you feel motivated to continue on to the next thing, and to give you a satiation, or to be satisfied with your accomplishment. So yeah, dopamine is a reward, but it's all about rewarding you for achievement. Now here is where the problem comes in, because people don't realize that when you get that dopamine hit, you feel so euphoric. It can be translated to playing a game on your phone, or watching someone play a game on YouTube. It can be so many different things, and you feel that satiation that you keep just going and going and going. Now, here's the issue that gets a lot of people in trouble unawares when it comes to your dopamine run amok, and that is you become addicted to the new. Mm-hmm. There are people that have talked about doing dopamine detoxes and how hard it can be and how blah life is. Well, our minds are naturally wired to appreciate and get excited about the new and the secretive. Okay. Now, remember when I said people get put out their houses and in trouble for cheating? Here's where dopamine comes in, because you can really, really, really love your life, but your life can be really boring. The same old every day, without a new stimuli to get a new rush of dopamine. Because that's the thing. Dopamine, the amount of hit you get, decreases the longer you interact with something. And that's another part of what its role is for, because we are made to work with change. We are made to be changing and not stagnant, because stagnant means you die. And so our minds are wired to appreciate, even lust for the new, especially when you haven't had it in a while. And this is how folks who have been together since Moses was a baby get in trouble, because the new got them. And then the secretive sealed the deal. So another big one. And there's this book called Fooling Houdini. And it is great because he was a magician that got in trouble for telling the secrets of the magicians and got put out the grand poobah of their, organization. But he's also really into the neurosciences. And so he has talked about his journey and how the mind can be fooled, and how sleight of hand works. And he's also looked and talked to professors and researchers about what gets the mind really going. And there's a segment in the book that talks about the power of secrets, especially the taboo, the naughty. And so people don't realize that, because they are thirsting for something in what they perceive as their boring lives, which means just that it has become the known, that they tend to have these unchecked, forbidden, if you will, encounters. And then they get this dopamine rush of, oh, it feels so good. And a lot of times the person is not necessarily more attracted to the other person. It's just that other person makes them, and they think it's the person, it's the experience. That person makes them feel something good. And that feeling of something good is the dope. It's the dopamine. And when I started realizing that, I was like, oh, and I told as many people as I could, but y'all, now that I have got the YouTube fam, I'm telling y'all, because I don't want you to get God. I would rather you and your significant other, if y'all got to pretend, role play, put on wigs, do whatever you got to do, the brain don't know the difference. And you can get that dopamine hit without ruining your life. But let's get back on to this enemy of this new and how it's out here wrecking lives. Another application of it is the fact. Now we've talked about how secrets can ensnare you, how it's the newness can get a big amount of dopamine to hit you like you haven't had in a while. There is another part that gets you, and it's on the retail side. So you know how people talk about retail therapy and how it feels so good. It feels so good because when you go shopping, even though you're familiar with shopping, you're looking for what? Bargains or new stuff. And so the newness is still within the shopping. And there are people all around who don't necessarily care about the actual new stuff they bought. They just care about the new, that, oh, look what I found today. And the newness starts to bathe them in the rewards of, you did that. A big example of this is the craze that used to happen with the couponers, to the point where a lot of grocery stores started saying, look, we got to put a stop to this, because it wasn't about finding. It got to the point where it wasn't about finding the deals. It wasn't even about hoarding. It was about the pursuit of the dopamine release of winning, the newness of what can I win this time? How much can I get for how low? And it's all about triggering that reward because of the new. Is this making sense? Are you starting to see how this hidden enemy has been wrecking our lives? But new research has shown that there are ways that we can counterbalance it. So why did I tell you about the mice? Why did I tell you about, the little micro things? It's because when you reappropriate dopamine and modulate it within yourself to where it becomes a reward for your achievements instead of the new stuff you experience or the new stuff you acquire, it starts to become controllable and not controllable, manageable again. And thus you get back into where you can start to reframe your boring life to find and see new areas where you can get quick wins, you can do achievements, and you can start to plan and do the dopamine at will. Now, let me tell you about one that gets me. Because y'all know I'm not going to sit here and preach at you. I'm not going to make it seem like, oh, I got it all made. No, most of the time I'm telling you this because I've either going through it, or just realized I got to work on this too. And that is the shiny object syndrome. Now, if you're not, I believe most people are familiar, but for the few people in the back, I see you who don't know what shiny object syndrome is. It's where you always are on the hunt for something new. What you have, you haven't even used. But this thing has more whizzle twizzles on it, and it has more little things where it can do a triple Indy somersault, where that other one can only do a 2 somersault. So of course you got to have this one. And I have been a sucker for it. You see, I notice. I say I have been because I'm getting the victory over this, y'all. I promise I am. And so shiny object syndrome, I used to wonder, I'm not a big shopper, for retail and stuff. And in another video, I talked about how it was something that I went through with a relative. And so I learned through that all of the gotchas that can happen when you get that, that shopping addiction. But baby, let a new software come up in here. Oh, yes. Michelle is like, I got to have this only to get in there and see what a high learning curve it has. And then I'm like, I'm good until the next one comes and the next one. So sometimes I have to go through an inventory of just what I have access to. And I have to make myself, because I have learned about dopamine, I have to make myself say, you have enough. You haven't learned to use this one. So go find something new that this does, because it's got a whizzle, twizzle, fizzle on it too. And that's what I do. So the shiny object syndrome is one that people don't realize is insidious. And they don't realize it because it is one of the heavy hitters when it comes to new. It might be the same thing that you just bought, but if it's got a new cover, a different color, a new name, it's new. And I used to be like this, y'all. I used to be like, my name is Jimmy and I can take all you can give me. Oh, yes. There was not a shiny object online that I didn't want. And I knew. I was like, now, Michelle, why you keep doing this? And now these things have monthly fees attached to them. And when you get to looking and the little $10, $12, $15, $19.99, $14.99, all of those start adding up each month. You're like, wait a minute. And now you're like, well, how did I let myself get here? It's because the dope got you. You're a dope fiend for shiny objects. And this is, like I said, this is Big Sis Michelle trying to put the word out there that there is a reason and there is a way back. There is a reset. And the reset comes in reframing and repositioning how we respond to dopamine. And remember when I said dopamine detox? One of the things that has been a problem with trying to do that is when you detox, you're not saying to yourself, I'm not going to do this again. You're saying to yourself, oh, we've just gotten too much of it, so we're going to flush it out so we can start again. And with dopamine, that is not a good thing, because it is the king and queen, the whole court, if you will, of addiction. This is where addicts live, in the dopamine, in the dope. And and I was so fascinated with this that I made this whole plan of how I was going to start working to, repurpose my life, to find the newness in it. It worked. It worked. And that's part of, some of the processes that I am putting into my journal and mental maintenance manual that I have coming out. And it's called the RISE system, RISE. So, but anyway, when I started taking what I have and understanding a little bit more, because we're ever learning about this stuff, but starting to understand a little bit more about how dopamine was affecting my life and the lives of many, I was like, there's hope. There's hope. Because let's face it, if I were to tell you, you gotta detox, and you're like, well, what I gotta do, Michelle? And you gotta not have so much screen time. You gotta not do this. You gotta not play your little phones, your little casual games on your phone. You'll be like, I know you lying. And I'm not trying to set you or me up for failure. And so, no, we're not trying to deprive until we can run back to it. We're trying to moderate. And deprivation and detoxing lives in the land of abstinence, abstinence, to abstain. And I've talked about, shout out to Gretchen Rubin from the Happiness Project, where she talks about moderation and abstinence. And abstinence is where it's either on or off. There is no in between. It's either I can do this or I can't. Whereas moderation is where I cut back, I moderate, I'm temperate, I can manage myself, because now that I'm aware. And so when you have detoxing of dopamine, that's a cut it off all or nothing. But the problem with detoxing is a lot of times you got to go back to it, because society, and to interact with society, requires it. You can't live without a phone. Ask me, I lost my phone in Spain last year, a couple of years ago. I couldn't do anything. My bank was about to lock me out because I was trying to use other people's phones, and they were like, we don't know you. And so it has become an integral part of your life. So you can't detox from your phone and really interact with society. Let's just face it. And so that's to abstain from it, to detox. And I'm not saying you can't. I'm just saying that when you come back, have a plan. Or you can just have that plan of moderation. And with the moderation, that is understanding that because the little mice in 2021 did what they were supposed to, now we can run in 2024 and on, where now we understand that you can use small wins. You remember I talked about the 3 minutes of exercise, and then I got the dopamine release. You can use small wins of doing little incremental things throughout. That's why Atomic Habits, James Clear's Atomic Habits, is so powerful, because people get those little rewards. And I'm going to tell you, when you start having little dopamine hits throughout the day, you don't go overboard, because it's not a deprivation where your mind kicks into the survival. My name is Jimmy and I can take all you can give me, because you're fearing that you'll never get it again. And so being able to have this dopamine moderation is a great thing. Now, again, abstain where you need to, but moderate more. And you'll get to the point where you don't have to have all of the stuff that you thought you needed to have. Case in point, I love the little casual games to decompress in the evenings, because I don't watch a lot of TV, but I will play a little, the little card games and the little match the threes, a lot of those little match the three games. But it had become a problem for me, where I would be fiending for it when it was time to stop working and make the transition over to getting ready for bed. And I was like, this is not good. So I abstained from it. And then I realized that maybe that's not a good thing, because I know I like to play them. I think they have benefit within moderation. And that's what I started doing. Now, when you're saying, and I'm going to tell you this part, because I don't want you to get too overwhelmed, because I really kind of just want you to focus on one or two, get the quick wins. If nothing else, get the quick wins, but then work on moderation instead of just total abstinence. So what I then started doing was I turned the games into a reward. Do y'all know that did not work? It did not work, because it kicked in that dopamine that made me want to fiend for the games. So instead, I was like, we're going to moderate. I will play, but I can't play 2 consecutive days as part of my routine. And that worked. I got the dopamine hit, and I was really able to stop playing once my little session was over. When I was out of all my lives, I wasn't waiting for the clock to tick down for me to come back and play it again. And that was really powerful. And so, like I said, I'm telling you what I'm experiencing and what's working and where I am. And I'm like, I'm you, me. I understand this. And we got the victory over this. So let me recap this so that you can go and do it and write in the comments. So what I want you to write in the comments, if you made it to this point, I want you to write dope, DOPE, write dope, to let me know you rocking with me. So this is the thing. I want you to choose one or the other, or if you big like that, you can choose both of them. And even if you want to in the comments, you can be like, I'm a big baller shot caller. I did both. What I want you to do is I want you to figure out something that you can do that helps you, that gives you a quick win. For some people, like, tie it to something that you've already got to do. When I first started doing the invisible exercises, whenever I would go to the bathroom, I would make myself do 25 squats. And if you go to the bathroom a lot, you're going to get your squats in. Oh yeah, you're going to get them in. And now I did 25. I started with 10 and I worked up to 25. Now, like I said, I'll do squats for 3 minutes while I'm heating up something in the kitchen or whatever. But start with something that is you can do high reps. I mean, not high reps, but you can do reps of it through the day. And it doesn't have to be something where it's totally in the body. It helps, but just find something where you can get those quick wins. You can spread it out through the day, because once you complete it, you get a little bit of dopamine. Like, oh, I got one done. Say for instance, you say, I'm going to do 6 reps or 6 times throughout the day. I'm going to do 10 squats, and just throughout the day. First one, count it down. Oh, got it done. Second one, by the time you get to the fourth one, it might be a little hard, but you're like, oh, this is going to give me a reward. Fifth one more after this. Sixth one, whew, we did it right before we have to go to bed, but I'm about to take the shower and I have gotten them done. And you feel good because that dopamine is saying, yeah. And dopamine, like I said, it gives you that rush because it is there to help you feel motivated to continue on, to help you to, especially when stuff is good for you. And that's another reason why people like to couple it with the physical, because you can quickly get the win and you can see the results. And that's another thing. Once you start seeing the results, you keep going because you're seeing results and you're not killing yourself. Another quick thing about that study, when they were looking at the rats and then looking at athletes, they noticed that you still get a dopamine rush, or you get flooded with dopamine after you've done a long activity of accomplishment, but it's just that one at the end, and that's it. But when you're doing it in little intervals, the quick wins, you get one each time. And so it becomes like a daisy chain of dopamine. And because you're getting your dopamine hits throughout the day, what you're doing is lessening your cravings. So remember, use moderation if you can. Use abstinence if you need to kickstart it off or whatever. But have a fallback plan once you detox, once you've abstained. Don't just go full throttle again. Moderate yourself, okay? And so you have the quick wins. Then, like I said before, you have the abstaining and moderating that you want to work on. And understand how your mind tricks you when it comes to the new and the secrets. So be mindful of that as well, and find ways to reframe your mind to find new angles in what you already have, what you already do, who you already with. All right. So guess what? I want you to go over and watch this next Brilliant Quest video. It's really going to help you. It's essential to you being able to have your Brilliant Quest. Don't forget to check the links in the description. And I am going to see you sooner than later. This is your big sis, Michelle, with Brilliant Quest. Bye.